Hello everyone, this is Danny from Deep South Homestead on our Porch Time chat today. Anyway, what I want to chat about today is it's gardening time. It's the time of the year to start considering seeds and buying plants and different things like that. And I get asked a lot of questions about, I have been for several years, about hybrid, GMO versus heirloom, all these different questions, and it can be confusing. Now, understand, I am no scientist about any of this. All I know is what works for me here and what research I've done for myself. Some things that I've learned over the years of gardening is that I only want to grow heirlooms here on my property. And a lot of people ask me, well, why do you only want heirlooms on your property? Well, it kind of goes back to a little bit of a religious thing for me. In Leviticus, I think it's 19 and 19, the Lord gave a law to the children of Israel. And it wasn't because he was trying to be rude, I don't think, or trying to be mean. I think he was trying to teach those people something about survival at that time. Because basically he told them, don't cross two cows together, your cattle, don't do that. Which went for the same thing for goats or sheep or anything like that when he spoke of cattle. But he also said, don't plant two kinds of seed together, because what happens if you do that is they cross-pollinate and you end up with a hybrid. And any of you who know anything about a hybrid, it will not produce back true to its own mother plant. And I think the Lord was just basically telling his people that because he didn't want them to run out of a good variety of seed. He told them just keep it down to one variety of seed to plant so that you don't lose your true varieties. Now, what is a hybrid? A hybrid is nothing more than two open pollinated plants that they could both be heirlooms that has just simply cross-pollinated with one another. Is there anything wrong with the fruit? No. There's nothing wrong with the fruit. The only thing about it is that you're not going to be able to save the seed if you're expecting to get something that's back true to the plant that you planted. Now, will it still grow like tomatoes, for instance? If you have an Amish paste and a Belgian giant growing side by side, and you save the seed from each one of them, will they grow a tomato? The answer is yes, they'll grow a tomato. It may come back as an Amish paste, it may come back as a Belgian giant, it may come back as a cross between both of them. That's the thing about a hybrid, is that there's no guarantees about which way it's going to come back. Another thing about hybrids that I really stay away, one reason I stay away from them, is that science has proven that they don't have quite as many minerals and nutritional value as one that is heirloom. Now, it doesn't mean that it's not good to eat. It's just that when something's a hybrid, it's usually prettier to look at. It's usually more disease resistant. It's usually you can cross them up for better flavors. I mean, there's just an array of reasons that things are made hybrids. Now, don't confuse hybrid with hybridization. Hybridization is where two particular plants are chosen and they are cross-pollinated under strict guidelines, and it usually takes years of doing this in order to create a plant that's classified as being hybridized. What you'll find out today, that most hybridization takes place in wheat. As far as I know right now in the United States, we don't have any wheat that's genetically modified. Most all of it has just been hybridized. The rice, the same thing with rice. A lot of rice has been through hybridization. The wheat was done that way to create a higher gluten content in it for bakeries and stuff like that, where it makes it easier for bread to rise, which has also caused the American public to have a higher gluten intolerance. because of the amount of gluten. Now, there's a lot of people that are gluten sensitive that could actually eat regular Ekron wheat or Emmer wheat, that's Pharaoh wheat, whichever one you want to call it, that is the ancient wheat, because the gluten content in it is a type of gluten that the body can deal with. It's not been hybridized. So you've got hybrids, you've got hybridization. Now, genetically modifying, GMO, genetically modified organism, is completely different. Genetically modifying is where they take the gene from one particular plant and they splice it in to a gene back into another plant. This gene is done in a way that is what's called not naturally occurring, thus creating a particular plant that will not reproduce on its own. If you use a GMO seed, you have to buy GMO seeds again if that's what you want. Is it a health risk? In my book, the way I look at it, anything that you go in and start splicing and tampering with what God has done, there might be some issues that when you start taking a grain of corn and you start splicing the Bacillus thuringiensis gene into it, which is a BT gene to kill the caterpillar on it, that tells me that if that caterpillar, if he eats that kernel of corn on the end of that corn and it kills him, then that's in the kernel of corn. And I don't want that in my body. It's been a proven fact that some of these things that they splice into these particular seeds mutate in the human colon. Because if you get corn chips that comes from genetically modified corn and you eat it, scientists have proven that after effects of that will mutate for up to 2 weeks just from eating a single handful of corn chips, will mutate for up to 2 weeks in the human colon, thus causing problems in the digestive tract. And there are studies out there that show tumors in rats and liver tumors, all types of different types of tumors in animals from using the GMOs, and it's believed that a lot of this stuff has been covered up by the chemical companies and stuff. So I'm not going into all that because I could go a whole lot deeper with it, but for sake of time I'm not going to. The other thing that is the way that I lean is heirlooms. Now, an heirloom is an open pollinated plant. Heirlooms are derived from people who have saved seeds from a specific plant, and they have taken time to choose the seeds very carefully, looking for specific traits in that plant, and they've passed it down from generation to generation in a particular region or in a particular area. That's why not all heirloom seeds will grow in all regions, in all areas, without complications, because they have to be adapted and adjusted to the area in which you live. Now, an heirloom seed is a seed that is predominantly 50 years old or older. It's been said that today, as long as it's pre-World War II, then it's classified as an heirloom. Now, heirlooms have some disease resistances. It depends on the region that they were cultivated in. They may have disease resistances in certain areas and certain regions, but not necessarily in all areas and locations. Now, one thing you have to understand about heirloom, don't get it confused with open pollinated. Because open pollinated just simply means you can be open pollinated and not be an heirloom. An heirloom means that it can be pollinated by the wind, or it can be pollinated by insects, or man can pollinate it. You can, like tomatoes in a greenhouse, you can go along and just take a vibrating toothbrush, because we used to have a greenhouse. You can just go along and just vibrate the plant and it'll self-pollinate. Or you can thump the leaf or thump the bloom or whatever with your finger. It just all depends on what you want to do in a greenhouse. But an open pollinated plant just simply means that it's a fertile, and that the pollen from a a variety that is like it. Say for instance you've got tender greens and turnip greens out there. They can cross-pollinate, and therefore that's where you get the term hybrid from. Two open-pollinated plants can cross and create a hybrid. Same thing when people, when you create a mule. Now this mule, he's a hybrid. He cannot reproduce on his own. And I think that's what the Lord was trying to tell him in the Bible. When you cross certain things up, that you'll end up with something that is not going to be able to reproduce and do you any benefit. So I specifically try to stay with heirlooms here on my property because I love the fact that I can create a variety and I can keep it true to my region, and I can develop it to fit my climate as well as my soil conditions and the disease that's in my area. I can choose healthier plants each time I save the seed, or I can cross, I can use the same plant and pollinate with the two of the same kinds of plants to create a stronger variety of tomatoes or whatever it is that I'm trying to pollinate with. Not only are we talking, when you're talking about open pollinated, you're talking about heirlooms, hybrids, GMOs. When you get into your beans, you have bush varieties, you have pole varieties, and what you run into with that is a bush variety will usually only have 1 to 2 good crops on it. Now, not to say that it won't keep producing the rest of the year, but it's basically designed to just have 1 or 2 good crops and then it's over. A pole bean variety, or a pole variety of anything, simply means that it simply will keep producing throughout the entire growing season. Same thing with your tomatoes. When you do tomatoes, you have determinate and you have interdeterminate. Most of your heirlooms are interdeterminates. You'll find a couple of heirlooms that are determinates. The difference between the two is interdeterminate just simply means that it runs like a vine. It'll just keep growing taller and taller, and the reasoning for that is that it keeps bearing. It will bear all summer long, or all growing season it will bear. A determinate variety usually simply means that it's a bush type variety that will mature within a 1 to 2 week period, and then the plant has basically bore most of what it's going to bear. Now, when you go, it really doesn't matter. I guess if you wanted to, you can buy heirloom plants from the stores, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. Just be sure of your company that you're buying from. And when you buy these plants from stores, understand, now not all places are going to do this, but most of your plant places spray these plants with a growth retardant. And that's just simply to stop that plant from growing while it's in shipment and while it's sitting at a place in order for waiting on someone to buy it. If you've noticed, a lot of these plants, they just seem to be the perfect height for a week or two at a time. They just don't seem to grow. That's simply because they have sprayed it with a growth retardant. And what I usually do, if I decide to pick up a new variety of some heirloom or something that I see in town that I don't have, and I don't have time to put the seed in the ground, I will pick one up and I will bring it home, and I will mix me up a solution of Miracle Grow, and I will stick that plant underwater and just slosh it around underwater and wash it and wash it and wash it before I put it out in the garden, because I try to wash off as much of that growth retardant that's been sprayed on. I have no idea of knowing which companies do what, but I do know that some of them use them. And I don't really take any chances with it. I just go ahead, because Miracle Grow is not going to hurt the leaves on it or anything. It's going to absorb some nitrogen through the leaf. And let me say this also while you're out there. When you start using things like Miracle Grow, and there's lots of others, Miracle Grow is the first thing that comes to my mind. Be careful about using that on plants, because you can get a plant addicted to it if you keep using it. It's kind of like a plant on crack or something like that, because it becomes so addicted to it that it can't grow without it. So be sparingly when you use it, and be careful when you use it, because what you're doing basically is you're just loading the plant up with nitrogen, because that's predominantly most of what's in these liquid fertilizers is nitrogen. And it is a good boost for the plant when you first put it out, but be kind of sparingly with it after you get it going. Your pelletized fertilizers and stuff like that are not quite so bad, but your liquid fertilizers are the ones that you really have to watch out about, that you can spray on the foliage and stuff, because they will become addicted to it. I hope that it's something maybe I've said today will enlighten you a little bit on seeds and planting and stuff like that. And if you like what you've heard today, be sure to hit the like button and share with other people, and most of all, subscribe so that we can continue to grow our channel. Thank you from Deep South Homestead.